Hello everybody, Elijah Williams with Fire Creek Forge, and first of all I want to thank everybody for the views on the forge burner build videos that I've got out so far, and I'm really excited to continue the forge project. I simply don't have the money at the moment to buy the rest of the material, so as soon as I can swing that, be looking for those videos. And yeah, it's been a learning process because the Frosty T-Forge burner, actually there's a built-in design feature that you can adjust the burner, permanently adjust the burner for your specific locality, you know, atmospheric conditions, which are based on elevation and things like that. And so a couple people pointed that out, and yes, you can adjust the burner by shortening the MIG tip or the gas jet appropriately, which I didn't know when I built the burner. And there are instructions to build the Frosty T-Forge burner, so you can go Google those and look that up as well. But it is a permanent modification, and therefore you can't, you know, readjust it without putting in a new MIG tip or something like that. So the air intake control system that I developed or something similar to that would be useful. Plus you don't have to do any modifications. Anyway, thought I'd point that out real quick. Today's video, I'm going to talk about the book that started it all. And little background here, this will be just my life story in 5 minutes, just kidding. It's actually been about 20 years ago that I started making knives, and I didn't make knives for 20 consecutive years, kind of dabbled in it for a while, and then the last 4 years or so really got into it again. But the way I got into knife making was I really enjoyed the outdoors, using knives, that kind of thing. And one day I was at the library as a kid, about 14 years old, and found this book, and By Step Knifemaking by David Boye. And it was a hardcover edition that I picked up, but picked it up, sort of paging through it like, holy cow, you can make your own knives? You know, the thought really had never occurred to me before that. So obviously I checked it out, brought it home, and started reading, and before I even finished reading the book, I started making a knife. And the first knife I ever made, and it was actually out of a piece of mild steel that had no ability to harden whatsoever. But anyway, so I wanted to talk about this book for a minute. Yeah, obviously I've come a long way since I first checked this book out, but this is the book that started it for me. And so, you know, it says there's been over 200,000 copies sold, and it is one of the more popular or well-known books in the knife making world for getting started. There are others out there. I have read some of them, and there's others, many others that I haven't read. But from what I have seen, this book is definitely worth picking up if you're getting into knife making or if you're new to knife making. It is definitely step-by-step instructions, which I found to be very helpful as a brand new kid to the craft, and I still use many of these techniques today. So that is one of the biggest pros about it. It is step by step. You know, if you have zero knowledge of knife making today and you go get this book or check it out at the library, you know, and read it, you can start making a knife tomorrow or maybe sooner, depending on how fast you read. Another thing I really appreciated about it, and still do actually, is sort of David Boye's approach to knife making. And it's really kind of more, I think he was more on the side of an art form, so to speak, and sort of making a knife something that's really something you want to use, you want to carry. And they're definitely, his knives you'll see in here are definitely functional, so form does follow function still, yet I think he kind of emphasizes, or in the book, the beauty of the natural beauty that can come from a well-made tool like a knife. So I appreciate that as well. And there's chapters on here on etching, you know, for decorating the knife, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's very comprehensive, and you definitely can learn a great deal from this. This book is about what we would call stock removal knife making, and there's nothing in here about forging, at least not that I remember, nothing to any extent whatsoever. He was, when he wrote this book, you know, he'd been making knives out of old sawmill blades, which, you know, you can get into that debate if you want about whether or not to use reclaimed steel. That's, you know, I'm not going to do that today or anything like that, but that's what he was using. So that's the sort of the stance he was coming from. You know, you're just basically cutting out a blank or an outline of your blade out of this steel, and then you're doing a stock removal process from there, which is just grinding the blade to shape and grinding the bevel in and doing your heat treat and so forth. So there's nothing in here about forging a knife, but even if you are more interested in forging a blade, don't let that, you know, steer you away from this book, because once you have your blade forged out and heat treated and so forth, the majority of what's in this book is still going to be very useful, because, you know, you can forge your blade out to shape and things like that, but you're still going to have to more than likely grind it, depending on what you're going for, but, you know, grind the blade and do all the multiple processes with a handle and all that kind of thing that this book covers very well. So just be aware of that. A couple of cons or not so great points on this book I would bring up are it's kind of weak on the heat treating part of knife making, which personally has come to be one of my biggest focuses in the world of knife making for me personally. In this book, you know, it's pretty limited on the heat treating side of things. It does have an appendix that does give you a little more in-depth information on tool steels and alloy steels, things like that. But the main, you know, it's an appendix, you know, so he doesn't really get into heat treating in any real depth in the book, and his process that he was using at the time was relatively primitive compared to what you can achieve today, but still functional, you know. So you know, if you're looking for a whole bunch on heat treating and that kind of thing, this book doesn't have it. But when it comes to just the fit and finish type functions and how-to ability on, you know, making a knife, it's very good. And like I say, I still use many of these techniques today. You know, this book is definitely not the be-all end-all in knife making. And like I said, there's lots of other books out there that are good, some that are okay as well. But I do recommend the book, and this is just my thoughts on the book, and it is the book that I started with essentially. So, you know, it doesn't really matter where you, well, let me rephrase that. It does matter where you start, but what matters more is where you progress to, or where you are progressing to. And so, you know, we don't, in anything in life really, we don't want to let our starting point completely define us or our trajectory from that point on. But, you know, yeah, I recommend the book. It's a good book. It's been around, you know, 40 years, something like that. Maybe not quite that long, but a long time. And, you know, if you're getting into knife making or just starting, it is an excellent book to read, to learn from. And that's all I have to say about that. So, yeah, hopefully this was mildly helpful at least, and I appreciate you guys watching. And if you hit the subscribe button or the notification button, that would be awesome as well too. So thanks for watching, have a great day, and stay tuned for more great videos coming up. Thanks.